Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Path Towards Remembrance, the first one in spring of this year. And that's why I decided to start off with something interesting and with something of a pretty light vibe. And today we are going to speak about the self-healing and the Ura flows. And this has a certain energetic significance because in April we are expecting the first wave of the Ura flows to come. Because usually April and May are very special months. It's not just because there is spring and everything, is coming back to life. The flowers are blooming, the trees are growing once again. But that also has a certain reflection for ourselves, where I would say April and May are always the times of spiritual growth and a lot of inner realizations and awakenings. So that's why I decided to kind of bring up this interesting topic today, which could also provide you with some useful advice on how to heal yourself, how to do it by yourself, and how all of this works. So I'm still working on the next energetic update that I should probably bring maybe next week or so. Maybe some of you remember that I think about a month ago, I recorded a video where I was speaking about the most recent events that were happening on the global arena and how they are connected to different energetic things that are happening right now. And I'm going to record one more video like this about the most recent revelations that have been taking place. But I just wanted to start with something which I think will be more encouraging than the video that I will record later on. So I'm going to share the presentation with you. And as I mentioned a moment ago, the topic for today is self-healing and the Ura flows. And this is, of course, another video from the Path Towards Remembrance series. So I will begin with a small explanation on how actually the Ura flows are connected to the virtues, because we can see a certain analogy that if we want to embody the source frequencies or the eternal frequencies, that also comes with embodiment of the virtues that are basically coming from the primordial source consciousness. Maybe some of you remember that this was also like a part of the structure of the plasma body, in which we had that wheel of virtues and we had different qualities corresponding to different elemental layers of the plasma body. So with the Ura body, it works on a similar principle. It's just in here, we actually have something that is referred to as the 144 virtues of the Highland Heavens. And those are the virtues that are almost like the primordial blueprints for this creation that have been seeded into this creation bubble right in the beginning of its existence. And they have been seeded directly by the source consciousness itself. So let's take a look at how those Ura flows are actually corresponding to the eternal virtues. And then I'm going to show you something interesting, how those Ura flows look like. And there is also a certain way to work with those Ura flows. If you feel the calling to, especially that, as I said, those Ura flows will be coming throughout April. So I'm going to start reading this, and I will, of course, explain in between what certain things mean. So there are 8 core eternal Ura flows, each one of them interfacing with one of the 8 Uradian points of the eternal body anatomy. The Uradian points are referring to certain points of concentrated energy in our eternal body anatomy, and they are basically responsible for circulating the Ura flows, which is almost like, we can compare the Ura flows as almost like the vital force of the eternal creation, the flows that are providing us with the gift of eternal life. So technically, if we were born with our eternal Ura body activated, this would also make our atomic structure eternal. But because certain circuits have been shut down within the structure of the galactic and the planetary body. We also took on that distortion where we need to go through the activation directly in order to trigger the opening of those certain circuits, because normally they are just not operating, they are dormant because they have been also shut down in the planetary body. Even though this is also changing right now because the planet Earth is under the eternal protectorate. So that means that Mother Earth is also awakening its YhU-Rha body. So each one of the 8 eternal YhU-Rha flows holds keys encryptions to 18 virtues. These YhU-Rha flows circulate through the template of the conscious identity once the 8 Uradian points have been activated. These eternal waves are also regularly being transmitted to the planetary grids to adjust the planetary biorhythms to the eternal creation Ura cycles. So that means that it's almost like through activation of the YhU-Rha flows within our anatomy, we are able to shift to the eternal creation Ura cycles. And this way we are almost like also escaping this vicious circle of incarnations and the karmic wheel. All of those are no longer relevant when you transition into the cycles of eternal creation. So to cut the long story short, we have 8 YhU-Rha flows. Each one of those YhU-Rha flows is holding 18 virtues, which in total gives us 144. Embodying the 8 core eternal YhU-Rha flows allows for the successful YhU-Rha body activation and progressive transition to the eternal Ura cycles along with the eternal host path. Conscious work with the eternal body activation is as important as conscious application and embodiment of the 144 virtues. There are various ways of utilizing the eternal body mechanics in daily life, and this is what should be one of the everyday goals of every conscious identity that wishes to integrate as much of its eternal self-identity as possible. And we can see this diagram where we have the locations of the Uradian points. And then we have and we can see that each one of the YhU-Rha flows is corresponding to one of the Uradian points of our eternal anatomy. And then we have the corresponding tones, colors, and the corresponding art that a certain YhU-Rha flow corresponds to. So, for example, if we have the first flow of YhU-Rha, that is called the Yata flow, its color is pearl white, kind of like the ivory color. It corresponds to the art of the eternal conscious flow, and this kind of refers to like, this is the art in which it's about the right flow of energy and how this energy is moving through the cosmoverse, keeping all the beings in constant connection with each other. And this way we are all co-creating with each other because we are all interconnected. So this art of the eternal conscious flow is also holding the 18 virtues that correspond to this art. And this first flow of YhU-Rha corresponds to the first Uradian point at the base of the skull. Then we have the pineal gland, the second Uradian point, and it corresponds to the Ura flow. It's in the pale blue color. And this one corresponds to the art of the eternal conscious wisdom. And we can analyze each one of the flows just like that. I will do it just by going through the images, because they will also carry a certain encryption of the YhU-Rha flows. And also they are like the visual representations of the 8 flows of YhU-Rha. So this is the first flow of YhU-Rha that corresponds to the base of the skull, the first Uradian point. This area is also referred to as the mouth of God, and it's like an area of our subconscious and overconscious mind, and it's kind of like where all those different, let's say, scalar waves from other dimensions are coming together. And if you can access your mouth of God area, you can tap into those other scalar waves from other dimensions. Anyway, this first flow of Ura is called the Yata, and it corresponds to the art of the eternal conscious flow, and this is the visual representation of it. The second flow of Ura is referred to as the Yara. The corresponding area in which this Yara flow anchors is the pineal gland. It is in the pale blue color, as you can see, and it corresponds to the art of eternal conscious wisdom. So it's almost like the center of our wisdom is right in the pineal gland. That's when all those perceptions about this reality that we may perceive with our physical eyes, but also like with our higher senses, this is where all of this is coming together. Then we have the third flow of Ura, which is called the Yaka, and it corresponds to the thymus gland, the third Uradian point. It is in the blue-green emerald color, and it corresponds to the art of the eternal conscious life. So from my latest research, there's a certain distortion in the way the conception point is taking place and then moving forward from there. And if there was a certain circuit activated within the thymus gland that is referred to as the Yala seed, the one that kind of brings the eternal frequencies from the Ura Lake Conservatory, and is almost like fueling the growth of the fetal body ever since the beginning, then we wouldn't have so many issues with the ancestral imprint to begin with, and our atomic bodies would also be eternal. So this thymus gland holds a great significance, especially in the early stages of the fetal development. And it's also one of the Uradian points, so it has the capacity to circulate the eternal spectra of frequency. The next flow of Ura is called the Yana flow. The corresponding Uradian point is the wing spot. It is in this white violet kind of like lavender color, and it corresponds to the art of eternal co-creation, and that is also connected to something that is referred to as the eternal ether grid, which is almost like an interface that connects everything with each other in the entire cosmoverse, enabling that co-creation to take place. The next Ura flow is referred to as the Yaya flow. It corresponds to the heart of a Fema, located between your chakra 3 and 4. It is in this white yellow, kind of like the pale golden color, and it corresponds to the art of eternal purity, or in other words, immaculation. So embodiment of this type of Ura flow allows for that purity and almost like keeping ourselves clean from anything that is disharmonic, anything that is trying to distort our eternal still point. So as we embody each one of the Ura flows, it's not like we are just filling ourselves in with those beautiful energy waves, but we are also embodying each one of those arts and each one of the corresponding virtues, so that once we embody all the 8 Ura Flow Currents, we are having the 144 virtues embodied as well, and we are consciously applying them in our reality. The next flow of Ura is referred to as the Yasa, and I think it's like one of my favorites, at least visually, because it has this sapphire pink energy, and it corresponds to the back of the Ephema heart. It's also the place that is referred to as the Caronades seal, but in other words, it's located between chakra 3 and 4, but kind of like on the back. And this one corresponds to the art of eternal transcendence, or in other words, the art of ascension. The next flow of Ura is called the Yada, and this one corresponds to the day point located below the navel. It is in this shiny silver white color, and it corresponds to the art of eternal grace. And as of this flow of Ura, it kind of looks a little bit different comparing to the others, but those waves can form any kind of shape or form, so that doesn't really matter. And then we have the last flow of Ura that is called the YhU-Rha. It corresponds to the last Uradian point, which is in the Kundalini, the base of the tailbone. It is in this blue-pink color, and it corresponds to the art of eternal union. So the best way to work with each one of those Ura flows and work on its embodiment is the way you do this is that you create a spark of energy within your Ura point. A Ura point is like the core of your eternal body, and it's located between the third and the fourth chakra, between the solar plexus and the heart space. So you visualize a spark there, and you send it to the corresponding Uradian point, which is like on all of those slides, we can see always the correspondence to a certain Uradian point. So for example, for this YhU-Rha flow, this would be the Kundalini. So you're sending a spark from the Ura point and then out to the Kundalini. And you keep looking at this image and you try to sense the flows, the Ura flows starting to come out from the corresponding Uradian point. And you can tone the corresponding flow of Ura. So in this case, you would be toning the YhU-Rha flow. And as you're toning it, try to sense the Ura flow coming out from the corresponding Uradian point and filling in your eternal body anatomy with the corresponding colors. So you can work with the Ura flows this way. And thanks to it, you are also embodying the 144 virtues of the Highland Heavens. Now, let's move on to a little bit of something different, meaning that since the topic for today is the self-healing, I would say that the best way to apply different self-healing methods, especially throughout April, would be working with the flows of Ura, because they are the ones that assist you with embodying those eternal flows into your anatomy. But there are also other, I would say, useful things that we can do on a daily basis. And such little things can actually always make a big difference. So let's take a look. The first thing is mirroring. Your reality and conscious identities that are close to you may sometimes serve as a direct reflection of your own patterns that you are attracting due to the morphogenetic field's compatibility. So, for instance, let's say I will give a certain example. Let's say that you are a driver and you're driving all over Europe, but all the time you are being told to drive only to a certain city. And all the time you feel like you want to take a drive somewhere else, but all the time you're being magnetized to that city. And what does that mean? That like your boss tells you to drive into that city all the time, like as if there wasn't any other cities in the world. Well, you might be energetically magnetized to a certain area because you might have your aspects there. Or for example, let's say you move into a completely new city, and whenever you are going for a walk, it's almost like your feet are automatically taking you on the same halfway all the time. Like you're constantly being magnetized to a certain place and you don't even know why. And believe me or not, but the universe is trying to show you something. The universe is trying to mirror you a certain pattern. So if something like this is happening to you, then perhaps it is worth looking into it, because maybe in some other lifetime you were in that place where you keep being magnetized to. And maybe, just maybe, there are certain aspects of your consciousness that are waiting to be integrated by you. Aspects that may have suffered some kind of a trauma or a very significant experience in their life that basically almost made a part of you get frozen in time. And throughout using the Ura flows and your eternal body, it is always the most effective to get those aspects back. So with the mirroring, we should look at it this way, that this reality and the people around us are always mirroring certain patterns that we should be aware of. It's not always this way. Sometimes there's also something that is referred to as the false synchronicities, in which there might be certain collectives that are maybe trying to almost like insert a certain pattern to you, insert certain associations that in the future will serve as potential triggers, and they are usually seeded into your subconscious and unconscious mind, and I will get to that. But very often when we are seeing ourselves kind of like being pulled towards certain places, almost, or like it could be also the other way around. If you are feeling like, oh, I never want to go to this city, or like, oh my gosh, like I feel extreme anxiety or fear from going to that place, then that is also a certain indication that there might be something out there. And that doesn't have to be places, that can also be certain individuals, the way other people are approaching us. This is also a certain mirroring of our own patterns, and sometimes almost like the universe is bringing us certain people to see if we are going to manage to transform a certain pattern that we have been holding within ourselves for a long time or not. So that's kind of how it works. The second thing is asking yourself questions. All the answers are within you. Sometimes in order for us to find the right answers, we have to ask questions to ourselves to trigger receiving an answer. So this is actually one of the most important things if you are working on developing your own inner guidance. Because, for example, you can write yourself a question before going to sleep and request to your eternal self to show you the answer for the question in the dream state, for example. Or sometimes just asking yourself the right question, or someone else asking you the right question. It can actually bring a wave of different interesting answers that that might be precious to you. So that art of asking yourself questions is very, very useful. Next thing is staying consistent. Practice makes perfect. Establishing a routine that is aimed at progressive self-improvement allows to find the divine right timing for consistent self-work. And I guess I don't really need to add anything here. If you establish a certain meditation routine and you stick to it for a couple of weeks, then you become much more effective in what you're doing, obviously. Next thing, find your own healing methods. Other teachings and healing modalities can be helpful, but they should serve as an inspiration for you to find and develop your own healing tools and techniques. So usually when it comes to different healing modalities, you can follow them, you can practice them if you feel that they are right to you. But eventually, after a while, you might find yourself developing your own healing techniques, your own way of working with certain tools that you might have learned. And then this can become very helpful when it comes to you becoming your own healer, when you develop your own sets of remedies, because after all, each one of us has a different encryption, has a different coding. So you might find certain methods more effective for you, rather than any other healing modalities. So it's this way, especially if there's certain individuals that are holding contracts with different egregores. It's even going all the way to religion, where if you are contracted with a Christian egregore from even like from other incarnations, you might feel drawn to the Christian prayers or also to prayers just simply to other angels and archangels, because this is in your morphogenetic field encryption. So that's why you're kind of, again, attracting that, right? But once you clear those certain contracts, you might find yourself resonating with something completely different. So as you are going through different clearings within your anatomy, and especially like clearing other contracts and agreements, you might find yourself kind of like shifting when it comes to your meditation habits and different healing modalities that you are applying. The next self-healing tip is utilizing a core eternal self connection. You do not need to use channeling or spiritual guides to receive information. A personal stream of inner wisdom coming from your core eternal self allows you to receive verified information about yourself. So this is something I would say important to realize, just like I said a moment ago about like praying to different entities and such. You do not have to do it, because I would say that the reason why we have been blocked on so many different levels for centuries is because they tried to limit our potential. They tried to almost make us forget that the most powerful being in the world is yourself, and you are the one who can make that change. Next self-healing tip is writing a journal. Write down any random thoughts, observations, as well as your dreams, which might serve as suggestions coming from your overconscious or subconscious mind stations. And you can write different questions, observations. You can ask about yourself or about anything that you would like. And writing a journal can be helpful if you experience any kind of like visions or experiences during your meditations. You can write it down, or also like the experiences from your dream state. And the last advice is exercise your consciousness. Try to focus on perceiving your reality from multiple perspectives. Try to find more details about the reality that surrounds you outside of the 5 regular senses. So we can kind of look at it this way, that let's say if there is a person that is blind, their hearing is much more expanded. Or if there is someone that basically doesn't hear, their vision is much more expanded. So we can kind of use that as a certain concept where, let's say, if you just close your eyes and you just try to focus on the external and also the internal sounds. So basically this exercising your consciousness assists with basically developing something that is called the Clervia senses, which is almost like an expanded version of our 5 senses. I will explain that in a moment as we go through the rest of the presentation. So basically, as we look at all of those self-healing tips, they are bringing us back to ourselves, to the core of ourselves. And the reason for that is that the reality of the source in itself is an internal experience. What we refer to as creation is located on the inside of the source field. Thus, everything that the eternal source consciousness projects out into manifestation is an expression of its internal state of being. Thus, nothing exists on the outside of the source. The entire concept of separation is purely an illusion. So the source in itself is also having an internal experience, and so do we. So if you want to heal yourself, you need to heal yourself almost from the inside out. And there are a few different aspects of the self-healing, and this is related not to just healing our spirit, but also our mind and the body, in order to almost like reestablish that Holy Trinity within us. So the health of the spirit includes all aspects of the energetic healing of the subtle light body anatomy, elemental plasma layers, personal connection to the soul, and other areas. So everything that we have been talking about in different concepts about, like, for example, healing the dark flowering affliction from your template, working on realigning the elementals within your body. All of those are basically an aspect of this transformation on the energetic layers, like those subtle layers of our anatomy. But the health of the spirit is as important as the health of the mind, which includes the hygiene of various mind layers, including discovering and clearing the unconscious, subconscious, and overconscious mind stations. And I will explain that in a moment, how this is actually related to the entire concept of like the purity of the mind, the art of the conscious thinking. That's how I'm calling that. And obviously we have the health of the body. There is this saying, a sound mind in the sound body. Hygiene and the right care of the physical body creates a suitable environment for the incarnating spirit. So I personally, the way that I have experienced it with many of the clients that I have been working with on personal sessions, each one of us should have a diet of our own, the one that corresponds to your personal DNA template, and also with your encryption. I think I was talking about that in my past videos about the Christic lifestyle. So if you're more interested in checking out like which diet is the best for you, then this is something that this is the video I would recommend to go back to. And we are talking about the self-healing because there's always a lot of dangers when you're going on a session with a spiritual healer and they are basically connecting with your field and performing some energetic healing on you. And what I find personally, I would say sometimes the most ridiculous is that someone is going on a session with a healer and then they are like, well, and so that person did some healing on me. I don't even know how that works, but they apparently did some stuff. And like, you don't even know what those things were. Or sometimes you're just even like ordering a healing session, but you're not even seeing the person directly. They are just apparently doing some healing on you. So that is always creating a certain danger here. And there are a couple of reasons for that. So I would say that I've been working with a lot of spiritual healers. I'm a spiritual healer myself, but I do not connect with your field. And I only provide you with the advice how to heal yourself. And I would say there is a certain difference in how that works. So let's take a look why actually this connection of the personal fields, why it may cause so much damage sometimes when someone is connecting to you energetically, and why there's so many distortions coming through on the first place. So each one of us have a different encryption of the personal template. And I guess that's what we all know already. Whenever the two energy fields interact with each other, they blend and exchange personal encryptions between each other. For this reason, when someone is doing energy work on you, their encryption may spread into your energy field and create distortions in your own geometry and bioenergetic field configuration. And let's say if they carry certain contracts or if they have some entity in their field, all of those imprints can potentially transfer to them directly. So I would say that the right healer these days is not exactly doing the work for you, but the spiritual healer should properly guide you so that you could make the change yourself. So I would say this is what the healing assistance should be about. It is whenever I'm working with clients on a regular basis, I do my best to provide as little information and ask as many questions possible so that you could find the answer yourself, within yourself. And this is kind of like what I have come into after many realizations of how this healing assistance works, seeing many people affected by different healers and almost like the damage that they have brought right into the DNA template structure, and how many of those people's gifts were literally taken away by those healers. So we live in the times of the false prophets, and this is one of very big deceptions. So I would say there are wonderful healers out there that might do some great work for you, but at the same time, the way this healing assistance, and I can see actually that it's going in that direction, is that you should be provided with the tools to make such energetic healing yourself with a little bit of guidance. So that's how I'm usually working with people on sessions. Okay. So let's take a look at the art of the conscious thinking. And this one is quite interesting. And this is going to refer also to the health of the mind. Something that I mentioned, that the right health of the mind is about clearing and realigning all the layers of your subconscious, unconscious, and the overconscious mind. So in very simple terms, mind can be perceived as a tool of the spirit that helps it with navigating through the reality of the externalized hologram. At the same time, the mind assists us with different interaction with the 3D hologram. So basically, the mind is almost like a medium throughout which we can perceive the external reality and receive different stimuli from it. The power of the mind in its organic form is infinite, and the mental space of each 12D identity station serves as a projection manufacturing center for creation of thoughts that later become things that may or may not have its direct manifestation in the external reality. So what that means is that, yes, you pick up the information about the externalized holographic reality through your multidimensional mind, not just the 3D mind, but like your multidimensional mind, just because not all of us are seeing other reality planes doesn't mean that they aren't there, right? And also, if you train your nervous system and your mind in a certain way, you will also start sensing, seeing, hearing, being able to tap into those other dimensional planes. And that is basically building up the structure of that multidimensional mind, or more like reawakening that structure that also went dormant. In its immaculate form, the mind can be perceived as a multidimensional antenna that picks up information that is encrypted within the manifestation templates upon which the externalized hologram is built, as well as a multidimensional broadcasting station for communication, not necessarily verbal but telepathic, and thought projection. So in a way, the mind is almost like the tool of the spirit that assists with not just perceiving this reality, but also directly interacting with it. Because technically, each one of our thoughts is being projected somewhere on one of the subharmonics of a certain dimensional plane. Looking at the mind from this perspective helps to realize that every living conscious being is a co-creator of the collective unified field. And at the same time, it has a direct impact on its own reality, being fully responsible for its own thought projections and energy interactions. The art of conscious thinking is a part of spiritual hygiene, since the thoughts that we surround ourselves with have a great impact on our reality. The human mind constantly projects things out into manifestation, and it keeps manufacturing new ideas and associations. The mental space can be managed through achieving the still point, a point at which all frequency waves transition momentarily into standing silent vibration waves of pure ether. At such point, the mental space can be observed and later purified. So that means that in order to kind of be able to achieve the internal still point, I mean, it's difficult usually because we have so many disturbing thoughts. It's almost like this inner chatter that doesn't allow you to rest. And that is often because of many different insertions that are on the different layers of our mind. So let's take a look at how this actually works, because we have the conscious mind that corresponds to our mental body. And obviously the conscious mind is this one that we are aware of, like all the thoughts that we are having, everything that, all of our opinions that we have about this reality, all the things that we basically know that we have learned within this 3D hologram. But then we have the other stations of mind that are lower than the conscious mind. We have the subconscious mind that corresponds to the emotional body. So the subconscious mind is almost like about our feelings, about sensing. So when someone starts to awaken their clairsentience skill, which is about the inner feeling, inner sensing, it's almost like those gateways to the subconscious mind begin to open. And then we have the unconscious mind, which is corresponding to the etheric body, dimension 1. And usually it works this way, is that we are not really aware of those two, the subconscious and the unconscious, because the gateway to our mouth of God is closed. And also is because we are almost like phase locked on a certain subharmonic of the conscious mind, and we are not able to access those other stations. So what happens, for example, is that there could be certain subliminal messages that might be broadcasted as the frequency waves into your subconscious and unconscious mind, and you might be picking up on them and not be even aware of it. And later those projections are starting to affect you in a very significant way, where, for example, you might suddenly become afraid of spiders, but you don't know where that fear is coming from. And let's say that maybe as a child, when you were 2 years old, the spider bit you, but nobody really told you about it. And you're wondering what is the origin of your fear from spiders. But obviously your cellular memory, which corresponds to the unconscious and subconscious mind, still holds a memory of it. So those stations of our mind are basically conditioning our behavioral patterns. And for example, if you have certain memories from your childhood that you do not remember, they are actually there in those lower stations. It's just very often when our mind is, there's a certain mechanism throughout our mind is throughout which our mind basically experiences a trauma, and that trauma starts to be almost like it starts to crush and overload our nervous system. So in order for the conscious identity to be able to process this trauma, it's fragmenting it into smaller pieces and downstepping it into the subconscious and unconscious mind stations. And then it's up to us to eventually go back to it and start to work on processing it. And then we have the overconscious mind, which is basically the mind of our higher selves, ourselves from the higher dimensions. And obviously, as we accrete more of the higher dimensional frequencies, this station of the mind also becomes accessible to us. And we progressively start to awaken the connection between those different levels of the mind, clearing it from anything that may have been blocking us before. And that brings us to the last segment of this presentation, in which I would like to speak about certain abilities that are referred to as the Clervia abilities. Because before we develop like the higher sensory perception, such as like maybe ability of telekinesis or teleportation, there are certain abilities that are referred to as Clervia. And those abilities are referring to almost like being able to see beyond the veils of illusion, being able to perceive this reality throughout an expanded version of our five senses. So let's take a look. Clervia abilities refer to the expanded ability to consciously experience the holographic reality beyond the veils of illusion. Clervia skills used to be a natural attribute of every angelic human, and they were progressively developed through the first octant cycle of life up to the 8th year of age. Thanks to these abilities, a conscious life form would be able to break through the yin-yang overlay and consciously participate in the eternal cosmic dance of co-creation, manifestation. And let's take a look why those abilities were lost on the first place. Due to the installation of the planetary frequency fence, 13,000 BC, most of the Clervia abilities became dormant and available only to very few individuals on the planet. Skills of expanded senses, which once used to be a regular ability, almost became completely forgotten and is nowadays referred to as magic or the higher sensory perception. While there's a difference between the higher sensory perception, which is referring to actually other senses, like, as I said before, like the Merkaba, teleportation, telepathy. And then we have the Clervia, which are about the expanded five senses, like the five senses in their full extent. The reason why the Clervia abilities became unavailable via the angelic human genome is the very specific distortion within the central nervous system. The organic nervous system of the human being would organically run either on the 12, 24, or 48 pulse with 12, 24, 48 pointed nerves, creating crystic fractal geometric configurations that would pick up the frequencies from the 12, 24, 48 dimensional bands simultaneously. Neurons, or the nervous system cells with such configuration, are referred to as the neura. So we have a neuron, which is like this distorted nervous system cell that is running either on the 5 or 10 pulse. And then we have the neura, which is representing this primordial blueprint of our nervous system. So because our nervous system cells have been modified, the Clervia abilities were lost. So we have the 6 Clervia abilities. The first one is the clairvoyance, which is obviously the ability to inner see beyond the veils of illusion. Clairaudience is about the inner hearing. Clairsentience is about the inner feeling. Clairaudience, which is the inner smelling. Then we have the clairgustance, inner tasting. So like you're trying out some meal and you can just taste a lot more than normally you would. And a very interesting one, the claircognizance, which is the ability to inner know. So as a part of this video, I am sharing one of the techniques that I have been sharing on my online event about developing certain clair abilities. And one of them is about the clairsentience. And usually it is the clairsentience that is awakening first in the personal anatomy. So I'm going to read this technique to you, and you can try it yourself and see if it will start developing some of those clairsentience skills. And as I said, the clairsentience is about inner feeling, inner sensing. So on the first step of this technique, try to visualize and sense your heart of God area, manifesting in the form of a beautiful shiny crystal located in the center of your heart chakra. So you almost visualize like a crystal right in the center of your heart space, in the middle of your chest. Take a few deep breaths through the heart of God crystal, progressively sensing that it's as if you suddenly find yourself on the inside of the heart of God, fully surrounded by the unconditional omni-love frequency. So you try to sense the entirety of your heart of God area, and you activate that crystal by taking concentric breaths through it. And you try to move your point of focus to the inside of that crystal. As you experience yourself on the inside of the heart of God area, send the frequency streams of the unconditional omni-love into your nervous system to pick up the cosmoversal source flows of unity. So you start to spread those frequencies from the heart of God in the center of your heart chakra through your entire nervous system in the body in order to sensitize your nervous system cells to different spectra of frequency. Once you have gone through this process, try to focus on the energy of where you are right now. So this exercise is about sensing where you are. So you can also like do it when you are going outside, or you can just do it in your room. And throughout this exercise, you will try to sense more about your room than normally you would with the regular 5 senses. You can either bring the miniature image of your room and filter it through your heart of God, and try to sense the reaction of your heart of God area to the frequencies you are bringing through. So you can almost imagine like a mini image of your room or the place where you are, and you filter it through the heart of God in the center of your heart chakra. And on the next steps, and by the way, you can do this with not just your room, but like you can do it with objects. So like you can choose like a crystal to work with instead, or you can also maybe even do it with trying to sense whether someone else's encryption is right or not. So you try to focus on the frequency of the object, person, or the energy that you find pleasant. So just to kind of make it clear, in this step, you are just trying to sense the energy of your room, but then you can just switch to something else, or you can keep trying to sense, your room as well. So try to focus on the energy of the object, person, or energy that you find pleasant. It doesn't have to be physically there with you. So you can just tune in with maybe like you want to go for holiday somewhere. So you can choose that holiday destination and tune in with it, whether it's the one that you would like to go to. Just like before, filter the frequency of this object through your heart of God. And try to ask yourself, do you sense anything? What is the rhythm of your heart of God doing? How does your heart of God respond to a co-resonant set of frequencies? So this first part of the technique allows you to sense the place to kind of feel how your heart of God is reacting to something that I would say resonates with you or like has a crystic encryption. And then try to focus on the frequency of the object, person, or energy that you find disharmonic or unpleasant. It doesn't have to be physically there with you. Filter the frequency of this object through your heart of God. Do you sense a major shift in the pulsation rhythms of your heart of God crystal? Does it feel different when you are sensing the object or a person you resonate with? So throughout the steps 4A and 4B, you're kind of learning how your heart of God area is reacting when it's resonating with something and when it's not. So this is like a helpful tool to start developing that clairsentience, that inner sensing ability. You can play with steps 3 and 4 on a daily basis, combining this with other senses you are developing for enhanced information and results. So this is obviously something that you can practice on a regular basis. You can also record it with your own voice. If you would like to discover more of the techniques that are supposed to assist you with developing the clairsenses, you can check out the workshop that is right now on my website, and you can directly get it from there. And it contains the 4 techniques that assist you with developing your higher senses, and that includes the clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, and the claircognizance, which is the inner knowing. So you can just check out the link on this slide, or I will also share it in the description of the video. And this way you will be able to activate your inner senses and work with them on a regular basis. So that would be everything for now. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found it helpful for yourself. And as I said, I will be soon recording a new video about the energetic update. But for now, I wish you a wonderful day, a wonderful evening or morning, whenever you are listening to this. And I will see you soon. Take care and bye-bye.